day 3 after me asking the question why the current version of me is not the one that's going to ask the question, what will I become in 6 months' time if I just focus for the last time? So far it's been good, and I noticed the pattern, which is usually the first 3 to 4 days. It's been 3 days so far. First two are usually the hardest. You try to follow your plan, but you fail. You do things that you said you wouldn't do. You don't work on the things that you said you would work on. You take breaks here and there. But what I notice is that it's basically a momentum that builds. And what happens is I've fell into the mistake of thinking that once the momentum is built, it cannot be broken. But what would happen is I basically would go through that exponential curve, but then when I'll be at the top, I'll think that I'll just stay there. But what happens is it breaks down and I go back to, well, I wouldn't say point zero because I still have some work ethic built from the exponential growth I've had, or the momentum I've built. But it's always basically going up and then breaking it and then going up and then breaking it. And you notice that there is a it's 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 moving up, but it's not moving up this way. So I don't think it's worth it to break the momentum because building it again, it's taken 2 weeks to build again. And the funny thing is, I talked about that the last time when I used to have when I had my night out, or I had my degenerate phase. And it took me 3 weeks to get back. Oh my God, that was the worst. 3 weeks, like just for my mind to start being clear because of how much I drank. But I'm trying to film. I want to film this video to talk about a little thing I had when I was in the shower. So if you didn't notice, my hair is still wet. I just got out of the shower, and I was thinking, people, and it was also after I watched a Hormozy video. People 100,000 years ago, 10,000 years, you know what, 2,000 years ago, didn't have Netflix, didn't have social media, didn't have pretty much a big percentage of what we have now, and they lived just fine. And the addition to that is that they had harder lives than we currently do, and they were probably more productive than we currently are. And this pushes me to think, or to ask this question: what would happen if I just removed those things? Like, what would actually happen? And the answer is obvious, it's nothing. Nothing will happen. And I will get where I want to get faster because I will be more focused. Because then when I'll want to take a break, I'll just read about how Alexander conquered the world. I'll just, I don't know, review my script, how I call people. Like recently, I've had like an hour and a half or an hour talk with ChatGPT to build me a script to call people, and I fed it to Alex Hormozy videos, and it built me a crazy good script. Like, I was watching Hormozy's videos on sales, and I was like, how can I use this for the cleaning industry? And ChatGPT just understood, and it built it for me, and it made me understand how to go about it. And so that was just for me forcing myself to do it. And that's what I mean by momentum. I couldn't force myself on day one. Like now on day three, I found myself able to on 6 hours of sleep, which I usually don't operate very good under. But going back to the question, what will actually happen if I create or separate the things I do in my life or the things I have in my life into two buckets? One bucket is contributes to my goal, and the other bucket is doesn't contribute to my goal. Or we can do helps me get to my goal faster, slows down my growth. And so if I were to make this bucket, I would start with this one, following the inversion thinking principle that Charlie Munger talked about a lot, Einstein too, and Jacob, the mathematician, which is I think the originator of this. So if you want to think about um, if you want to find a solution to a problem, it's usually good to think about it in reverse. So if you want to lose weight, basically ask yourself, how can I make sure to never lose weight ever? Or how can I make sure to do the opposite? Like, how can I make sure to gain weight? So if I were to answer that question, well, let's go there. Let's not go there. Let's ask it for my specific case. So if I wanted to get to my goal slower, what would I do? If I wanted to stunt my growth, what would I do? I would watch YouTube videos thinking that I am learning, but in reality, I'm not. I would not make sales calls. I would not make cold calls. And then I would not follow up with the people that I book calls with to make sure that they show up. I would not redo or work on the things that matter the most, meaning the things that move the needle forward. So mainly cold calls, working on the funnel, making sure that the clients that I currently have, which I worked very hard for or very hard to get, to make sure they stay with me. I would do everything to make them quit, meaning I would not call the leads that I get them. I would not update the ads. I would not continue the split tests. I will not track the data. I will not update the offline conversions. I will not do any of that. I would also make sure that my energy is always low by not sleeping on time, by eating food that I can hardly digest, or food that gives me huge crashes. I would talk on the phone or talk to people who I don't really get anything out of on specific times of the day where I need to be working. I think that's a pretty good start to make sure I never grow. Yeah. Man, if I just remove YouTube, that'll be crazy good. Like, if I just remove that, because here's the thing, like, when I watch an Alex Hermosi video, I just feel like super productive for some reason. I'm like, I'm learning. But the crazy thing is, I'm learning how to manage a team, how to manage salespeople. But I'm hardly making sales myself, or hardly making sales calls myself. That's crazy. Um, so yeah, now let's invert those and let's create now, or let's start adding items to the not contribute to my goal bucket. So we got YouTube, we got unnecessary phone calls, we got unnecessary conversations in general, especially in times of the day where I'm supposed to be having um, those conversations, where I'm supposed to be working. Um, Eat shit food, so junk food, sleep late, social media, but I don't have social media on my phone, so I'm good. Um, and on my computer, I just go there like 3 times a day, probably. So yeah, that it's crazy good how little those things are. We have the impression that there are so many, but they're just so few. If you just remove them, it feels hard. Like it feels like you get the FOMO. You get the impression that you're gonna be missing out on stuff, but you won't. And I did this crazy experiment from I think April. I think I did it from April to July. April, July, or April to August, where I didn't log into my Instagram at all. Zero. I didn't know who texted me. I didn't know who sent me reels. I didn't know what people were posting on their stories. I knew nothing. I actually my accounts were deactivated. And I was like, if I reactivate them, people are gonna think that I'm weird or whatever. But so that's why I didn't want to reactivate them. And I had basically zero Instagram for these few months. And nothing happened. Like my life was just fine, probably better. Um, but the only thing that I've struggled the most to remove is YouTube. And I think I just need to convince myself that I'm not learning from it. And I'm using YouTube as a proxy for product. I'm using educational YouTube videos as a proxy for productivity. I'm using watching those videos as proxy for productivity, which is completely wrong. Totally wrong. Not true at all. And the proof is it's not making me any more money. And I thought to myself, like, I made 5K Canadian in August. But then the next month, I made, I think, 2.5, 2.4K. And there was a particular reason, which was I was testing an AI that would text people instead of me texting them so that I could scale further, but it didn't book as much. And so it's kind of understandable that I decided not to make sales during that month. But when I discovered that the bot was not the best and I didn't want to continue with it, and I was like, I'm gonna have to train people. I'm gonna have to train VAs to take calls for my clients. There's no way around it. AI is still not there yet. I didn't sell. I didn't sell. I didn't cold call. It's crazy. I didn't. I didn't, and that's the thing. I was working, well, not really working as hard, but working on the things that matter less. So I probably had like 3 to 5 hours a day that I would do on client work, but I wasn't really working on things that moved the needle forward. And right now, if listen to Hormozy, he prompted me to ask the question, what is the one thing that if changes in my business will make me so much more money or will generate a lot of growth? And that thing is more sales calls on my calendar. And to do that, I need to cold call more. So back to the bucket thing. Things that contribute to my growth, things that don't contribute to my growth. If all of these things are removed, I'm just left with these things. You can only look at a wall or stare at a wall or a ceiling for so long. So, yeah, that was the video of today, giving you some updates, and see you soon.